Hey, welcome everyone. Dr. Castillo with Spanish Chiropractic Success. Today I wanted to go over rapid fire translations for mechanism of injury. Now, this is going to be really important because most of what you're going to be doing is actually just listening and interpreting. But on a basic to intermediate level is what's going to be important for you. So really, just turn your brain off in regards to learning how to say stuff in Spanish, and turn your brain on for listening for key words so that you're able to interpret key mechanisms of injury. Now, this is going to be for when patient walks in, it's day one, and you're basically like, hey, my name is doctor or doctor or doctora. How can I help you? What happened, basically? And I'm just going to read a couple lists of words, and then I'm going to give you Spanish and then English right afterwards. And really what this is to demonstrate is if you were in the clinic and then you had your front desk Spanish translator with you right there, so that when the patient is talking, they're able to translate for you. So just kind of imagine like this is how it would be. So a patient walks in and they say, Doctor, lo que pasa es ellos me pegaron atrás. Ellos me pegaron atrás. Tuve un accidente de carro. So what they basically said, like, hey, they hit me from behind. They hit me from behind. This is a car accident. Doctor, lo que pasa es me caí. Me caí. That means I fell. I fell. So at the beginning of that phrase, I say, Doctor, lo que pasa es, right? And that's usually a kind of a preliminary phase that patients give, basically saying, like, here's what happened, okay? Doctor, lo que pasa es me caí de unas escaleras. So remember, me caí is I fell, but now I just added another word, escaleras. Escaleras can mean two things. It can mean fell down the stairs, which is likely, or it could be fell off a ladder. So you might have to ask a couple more questions to find out if they were maybe working, or maybe they work with roofs, like techo. Techo is roof. So you can ask them like, oh, ¿trabajas con techos? And if they go, sí, probably means they fell off a ladder. You know what? It's funny. Like if I don't know, specifically with that word escaleras, if I don't know what they're talking about, I'll say like, estaba like subiendo aquí escaleras o escaleras. I'll actually just use my hands. Like, I don't care. It's kind of, I don't know, informal, but like, I want to know what's going on. And then they'll actually just tell me, or they'll demonstrate what they were doing. And then I'll be able to understand what they were doing because they're talking in Spanish and then they're demonstrating how the accident happened. So kind of a little fallback that I use with that word specifically. Let's say they say, me caí a causa del piso resbaloso. Anytime you hear the word resbaloso, that means slippery. You'll hear you'll hear that word specifically if it's like wintry conditions outside and somebody basically slipped on the ice maybe, or maybe they got in a car crash because of icy roads. Or slippery is the word, sorry, slippery roads. Or if they're working in like a restaurant, it might be like they slipped on the floor, for example. So if I know that it's not a car accident, I'll start asking a couple questions just to demonstrate that I understood what they said. I love doing this. So they'll say, me caí a causa del piso resbaloso. They'll say, oh, doctor, lo que pasa es me caí a causa del piso resbaloso. So I fell because it was slippery before. And I'll be like, okay, ¿recuerdas aceite o agua o qué exactamente? So basically what I say after that is, did you remember, was it because there was like oil on the ground? Was it slippery because of that? Pretty common in a kitchen, right? In a restaurant. And then I ask, or because of water? Excuse me. And then they'll say like, oh yeah, it's a causa de la agua. And I'm like, and then they'll say that and they'll be like, oh, okay, perfecto. So basically, I do that for two reasons. I do it just to probe a little bit to see if there are any other details in the story. And then secondly, to demonstrate that I understood them. And I love it because once they're on that like train of like, finally a doctor that understands me, they just open up and you build so much rapport within a matter of seconds. It's pretty funny. Now for me, it still happens to me because I look kind of white, you could say. I'm not a traditional like Mexican, darker skin. Now, I mean, obviously you can't generalize. I mean, there are some Mexicans that are white skinned, but for the majority, like most Mexicans have like darker skin tone, more pronounced facial features, like representing the culture. And I have some of them, but not all of them. So for people like, for situations like this, when I say something like that, like it builds rapport really fast. So patient walks in, they say, lo que pasa es, tuve un asalto. I had an assault. Then you can go into probing questions, ask like, was it during the day? Was it at night? Where were you? That type of thing. And I'm not going to go, right, because I'm not going to go into that, but just for your mind, tuve un asalto. If you hear the word asalto, you know it's assault. Patient walks in, you say, okay, ¿cómo puedo ayudarte? They say, doctor, lo que pasa es, durante encargando una cosa pesada, comienza el dolor de mi espalda. So basically, when I was carrying a box or when I was carrying something heavy, my back started to hurt. Doctor, me agaché y después me dolería. O después tuve dolor. So basically, I bent at the waist, me agaché, or me doblé. That's another one. Anytime you hear that word at the end of a word, it's past tense. Past tense. So me agaché, which is basically bent, and then me doblé, which is virtually the same meaning. You could do patient walks in, and they're like, estaba subiendo escaleras y después mi rodilla tuve dolor. Or tuvo dolor. So basically, like, I was going up some steps, and afterwards my knee hurt. Right? So know your body parts. I mean, rodilla, knee, tobillo, ankle, pie, foot, pierna, leg, cabeza, head, nariz, nose, hombro, shoulder, brazo, arm. And sometimes they mess these up. So you really have to point, like, is it this or is it this? Because sometimes mi hombro. But we know, see, this is where basic education, you just throw it out the window. Because if you're to go to a Spanish class and they're like, this is what brazo means. This is hombro. They might say mi hombro, right? It's just funny things like that. Same thing with pierna. They'll point to their knee and say, oh, mi pierna. Right, so if you don't know the body parts, you're kind of screwed. So you really should know those. Codo, can't really mess that one up. Muñeca, muñeca means wrist. It also means doll. So two meanings for the same word. And obviously they're not going to be talking about dolls during the history, but just FYI. So we went over that, and then finally, just as like two more things. So sometimes patients will say like, doctor, lo que pasa es, no entiendo exactamente cuando tuve el dolor, pero creo que dormí mal. I slept bad. Sometimes patients say that. And then finally, this is the most important one to learn when it comes to mechanism of injury, and the phrase is called de repente. When patients say de repente, that means suddenly. Suddenly it happened. And usually it's when a patient has some sort of episode of pain and they don't know what the cause of the problem is. And so then if you hear like not many descriptive words, but all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, you hear de repente, you know that it suddenly happened. And usually you won't have to ask too many questions after that, because it's like, well, they don't know what's causing it, so it just happened out of nowhere. And then after de repente, you want to ask maybe a couple questions like, were you at your house? So you can say like, en la casa, or en el trabajo, or, and you can start asking questions. But that's for another video. I just wanted you guys to listen to the mechanism of injury in Spanish and then mechanism of injury in English. And you can probably piece together, or guess, that like all of it's in past tense. So pretty much everything you heard during this video is past tense language. And there's this distinct difference between present, past, and future tense. But for the sake of this video, everything in this video was pretty much past tense. So hopefully you guys got a little bit out of this. This is just for chiropractors, chiropractic students. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I We'll put my email address down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, share the video with other people. Maybe it's a team member. Maybe it's a team member that's a chiropractor in your office that would like to learn more about Spanish. This would be a video for them so as to empower them to be better Spanish speakers. If you need any specific materials designed for you, let me know. I'd be glad to make them for you. I have tons of free materials that I give not only to my own doctors, but also to people that I am teaching currently. So I'm going to sign off until the next podcast / YouTube video. You have an awesome and blessed day, guys.